So today we talk about filing W-2, W-3, 1099, 1096, 1096. Okay. Now, of course, everything I talked about, it is based on what I know at the present time, and you want to take responsibility to verify the knowledge. If it doesn't fit you and you have doubt related to that, make sure you do your own research. And we do not take responsibility from what happened to you while you are listening to the webinar and taking note, right? So let's just make sure that is out there. We understand the boundaries between our advice and versus your action. All right, so let's talk about W-2, W-3. And I know you know what that is, but what we want to talk to you about is three things today, okay? Number one, right now, if you are an employer, it is really about time. It's really about time for you to start sending out, maybe you have an employee who already left you, but you still want to make sure the address, everything is current. So you want to make sure that you got the address current. And so when you produce W-2, you can actually email that to, mail that to that person, right? So right now, it is the time to confirm your W-2 content, the address, social security number, the name, and all of that general things. And also right now, it is the time to update your W-2 with more tax preferential treatment, okay? So I will quickly, so this is what a W-2 form is, and I know you know what that is. When to file that, the W-2 filing is actually before January the 31st. So I just want to quickly mention that to you. I want to go to the form so we can talk about that. And employer must use this one to FICA tax to report the Social Security, Medicare, withholding, all of these taxes need to reflect on the form. So let me just bring you to the form, okay? I want to get here because I want to talk about preferential treatment on taxes for a W-2 employee and you still have time. So let me give you an example. If you are self-employed and you do W-2 for yourself, and your company, you look at your bank account, you still have a lot of money left, and you're wondering how much taxes you're gonna pay. And folks, do you know that right now, you still have time to put in more money in your retirement, right? Let's say you have 401k, then you can put that in right now to get yourself the maximum deferral. When I say maximum deferral, I mean that for example, if you're under age 50, you can put in 19,500. That amount is not taxable. What I mean by that is, on the W-2, if you put in let's say you didn't pay yourself any salary, you just decided to pay yourself now because you have money, and the 19,500, you say to yourself that I'm going to put that in my 401k. So what my W-2 looks like? Look at the form, folks. That box number 1 is 0 because that's your wages. You can deduct that money out of your company revenue because you already paid $19,500 salary, right? But your taxable box number 1 is 0 because it's deferred. You don't pay taxes. What that mean? That means you take a W-2 home with 0 in the box 1. That doesn't increase your taxes on your 1040. It doesn't increase your taxable income, doesn't increase your AGI in 1040. So you actually had 19,500 as expenses for the business, but you don't have income as a personal income. But your box 3 and 5 will have 19,500. So this is where we want to say that number 1, when you are an employer and you're ready to issue W-2, W-3, and right now I need you to verify the data. So you got your data correct and everything is good. Number 2, look into tax preferential treatment, right? So I just give you an example. That is what? That is the deferred retirement contribution. And whatever you defer on your deferrals, and that amount doesn't show up in the box 1, so it doesn't increase your taxes. It's a huge tax shelter, and it's proper, it's legal, it's very well used, And if you don't know anything about it, don't close your year end. Go to your CPA, come to Community CPA, or go to your financial planner and figure out how to do that. And if you're over 50 years old, it's 26,000. So, those amount changes from year to year, but you can always verify that amount with your financial planner, but making sure you know that this is the time. Before you issue W-2, you can still save money, okay? So now looking at this form, we talked about box 1. That box 1 do not have to equal to box 3 and the box 5. We know that. So you don't always assume they're all the same. No. But if box 1 is 0, that just means you don't pay taxes at all for this year. All the income you made in here. But your Social Security Medicare still calculates. So you see there's a federal income tax withheld. And if you don't pay taxes on the 19,500, of course, you don't have to put in any tax amount to withhold. And for the state would be the same thing. If you have no income on box 1, then you don't have taxable state either. So your state would not be taxable, especially if you are in those states that you do pay income tax. So they normally reflected your federal income tax. If your federal income amount is 0, then your state would be 0 as well, right? So this is where I want to mention to you, of course, there's other things. So a lot of those benefits are showed up on the box A and the box B, C, and D. See, these are the different benefits, and the most common ones are health insurance premiums, and the most common ones are the 401k contributions, the employer were making for you. And then you also notice that on the box 10, there is a dependent care benefit, right? So those are known. And if you pay daycares, and the employer can take your daycare expenses, pay it for you through the flex account. So then you will have that amount sitting there, which you don't pay taxes on that one. It's a pre-tax benefit again, right? So this is where the W-2, and don't think of W-2 as just 6 numbers. No, a very well designed W-2 would have numbers from 1 to 6, and also have a lot of in 12, and some of them even in 14. So this is where if you never really experienced that, then maybe you didn't understand what employer and the employee can do in terms of tax saving. So you want to explore that. I also want to point out on the box 13. So some of the work you do qualify for statutory employee. Statutory employee just means that even though you got W-2, but you can actually move your W-2 to Schedule C under 1040 to claim employee-related expenses and deduct them. Remember, like if you work, for example, if you work at Wells Fargo, you get W-2, and you can't really deduct work-related expense. For example, if you worked at home, or you drive for for Wells Fargo, maybe I guess they would reimburse you for mileage. But let's say you drive for a company, they don't reimburse you for the mileage you drive for work purposes, so you would claim work-related expense. But when President Trump rolled out the Job Act, is basically eliminated that. It just doesn't really work anymore. When you have expenses, it's get overwritten by the high standard deduction. So you actually don't have any need to do that. It doesn't benefit you. But if you are a statutory employee, then you can deduct that and dollar to dollar against your income. So this is where, but statutory employee is not automatically you say you are and you are. There's IRS regulations to say who can be, who cannot be. So you want to check with your HR to find out if you're not sure whether you're qualified or not, and to see whether you qualify for statutory employee, right? And W-2 is is coupled with W-3. So what W-3 is, normally if you are an employee of an organization, you probably never really see W-3. But of course, in a CPA firm like ours, every client we have has W-2s, then have one W-3. So W-3 is a summary of the W-2 for the year. And this is sent to, together with a copy of W-2, it goes to Social Security Administration to be reconciled with what data you send out to IRS. So your employee will take your W-2, file their income tax return, send it to IRS. But you, as an employer, and you would take the W-2, W-3 together and send it to SSA. And then these two government agencies will reconcile. And you probably know that sometimes, if you have an employee who happened to make a mistake on their social security number, and you submitted W-2 and you submitted W-3, pretty soon you're getting a letter saying, hey, this employee and the social security number doesn't match. Please correct and let us know. Remember that letter? A lot of people get that letter, especially if you make mistake, or especially if someone, the social security number doesn't really belong to them. So that would happen. When that happens, what you really need to do is to change W-2 and then resubmit that to the Social Security together with that letter, because you supposedly to update that. If you don't update, what happened is the Social Security amount you collected on that person and would never go to that person's account. So if that person retires later and they miss 1 year of benefit, they miss 1 year of benefit that was used to calculate their benefit total when they retire. So it is actually important for all of us, when you are getting ready to retire, one of the things you need to do, and you need to go to Social Security Administration, pull out their benefit statement, match to your tax return to make sure that every year, the benefit they say you got, it is really what you filed. Okay. If, we have cases where our client just missing out of blue, just missing 2 years of the benefit, somehow it didn't make onto their record. So they would go back to take their tax return, go back to Social Security Administration and get that fixed. It's important, right? So that's that. So W-2, W-3. So we mentioned about getting the data ready so that you can produce the correct W-2, W-3. Number 2, you want to look into those tax deferrals. Right now, it is not late, so you can still do that. Number 3, I want to remind you about the due date. Okay, W-2, W-3 is due on January the 31st. So it is due and to your employees. So you need to make sure that you give the W-2 before that time to all your employees so they can do their personal tax return, right? So that would be something that you want to keep in mind. W-2, W-3 is due at the end of January 31st, and you really want to start cleaning up your database and making sure that January to come and you can print it out properly, nicely. All right, so that is about W-2, W-3. Let's look at 1099 and 1096. So 1099, 1096. So the difference between W-2 and the 1099, and we talked about that a million times in our webinars. And in case this is the first time you hear it, let's just put it this way. And when you have an employee, and obviously you have W-2, but when you have subcontractors, and what you do is you issue 1099. So a lot of time, if you use QuickBooks or other accounting software, and when you create a vendor, so when you say, for example, if I work for you, and so I send you an invoice, a Ying Sa, and charge you $1,000, I give you an invoice, right? You set me up in your system to pay bill to me, you pay bill, so you write a check to me. But when you are writing that check, and you can set up a Ying Sa in the system as a 1099 recipient. Okay, in your computer system, it actually allows you to set up the vendor that way. So before you do that, before you set me up as a vendor, you know what you need to get from me? You need to get W-9 from me, okay? And for that W-2 you have, you need to get from me. If I'm your employee, you need to get from me W-4 and I-9. But if I'm your subcontractor, I just need to give you W-9. On the form of W-9, you will know that whether I am working as a sole proprietor or I am working as an LLC member, or I'm working for you as an incorporated entity. So for example, Community CPA Inc. is incorporated. So when you set Community CPA up as a payment, you're paying our bill, you don't need a W-9 from me, or you can ask W-9 from me, I'll give you one, but it will show that Community CPA is a corporation. When I am a corporation, you don't need to send me a 1099. But if I give you a W-9 with my name and my social security number on it, and I check the box as a sole proprietor, or I check the box as an LLC, suddenly your system, when you set your system up, you will be checking out that vendor as a 1099 recipient. So you want to make sure my address is there. You want to make sure that every time you pay me is in the system. If you pay me cash, you want to book cash receipts, right? So you want to book your expenses for paying Ying $50 cash. Then you also gonna put in the check number if you wrote me a check for $50, right? And I know there is a rule. If you pay me less than $600, you don't need to produce 1099. Because in the year, I provide service less than $600. But when you set that up, at that moment, you probably don't know whether I'm gonna go for 6,000 or you're gonna be just producing only $50, right? You don't know that. So my recommendation to you is that whenever you have someone who work for you, if they're not your employee, you ask for W-9 and you set them up as a 1099. If they give you a W-9 as a corporation, then of course you don't set them up as 1099. You just set them up like an ordinary vendor, like Target, Walmart, Home Depot, right? But if they are sole proprietor and LLC, then you know you want to track how much you are paying that person. At the end of the year, right now, you look at, oh, I only paid Ying $50. So I don't need to run 1099 on her. It costs money to run 1099. You have to buy those forms or you have to pay to other people to do it. So if it is under 600, you don't need to do it. But if it is over, for sure you should, right? But that doesn't mean if it is under 600, you don't have their record. I didn't say that, right? You still want to have everybody's record from W-9, and then you will decide on which one is over 600, you're gonna run 1099. So that form, it is really to track your payment to vendors. So someone was asking me this question. I answered it in a really simple way to give you an idea. So if you have a W-2 employee and you also have a contractor, and what's the real difference between the two? And I know you know that, well, I have to pay more if I hire an employee. I pay less when I hire 1099. So how much more and how much less? I want you to remember this 25% rule. Generally speaking, okay, if you have an employee, let's say you pay that employee $100, okay, $100. And you, as a business owner, your real cost for that $100 is $125. Okay, I can break the $25 for you in the very granular details, but I want you to remember just that number. And you use that number, you will never fail. Sometimes our folks, especially in construction, they don't really quote themselves. They don't really quote clients properly because they forgot their employee, if they pay $100, it's not 100, it's 125. Okay, so you want to know that number in general, but if you are hiring someone as a self-employed and pay for 1099, if you pay 100, your cost is what? 100. So for same $100, you hire two different people. One would cost you $125 because they are employee. The other one will cost you $100 because that person is a subcontractor and is not your employee. Then, then the battle begins, between you and the government. They would come back, say, no, that's an employee. And you go backwards and go, no, that's contractor. So here it is what your documentation gonna look like. If you have a good documentation, you will be able to succeed in terms of debating. But if your documentation is not good, you don't even have W-9, and you can't even find these people anymore, you just have their name and writing down what you pay, those are not good documentation. I'm talking about good documentation is not only W-9 is in place, and a contract is also in place, and also the requirement of the government. For example, they're not paid by hours, they're paid by jobs. Simple things, right? And they're not just working for you, they're working for other people as well. So those are the things you want to collect. You want to know in order to be safe, to have that person as your subcontractor. I know in industries, there's some established ways of how contractor and the contractor and employee works. For example, in restaurant business, most of the waiters and the cook and the chef and the busboy and girls, all of these positions are salary, are wages or salaried positions. So they are W-2s, okay? But you turn around to the construction company, a lot of construction company, they also have W-2, but they also have a lot of 1099 subcontractors. So it's really kind of depends on what industry you're in. So you might prone to have more subcontractors than employee. You just want to make sure that right now, it is time for you to look at your vendors, pick out those ones that they're your subcontractors, making sure you have lined them up as a 1099 NEC recipient. Then that way, and then you can run your 1099 at the end of the year. If you use QuickBook or other system, they already have a place to print it. As long as you as long as you tick mark them properly, they show up, then you can print them out. All right. So this is where I really want to hone in the difference of W-2, 1099, let you know that right now to set up your system to print that out. And your 1099 folks need to receive their paper by the end of January as well. So here, what is considered vendor? So vendor is really the official name for the 1099 recipient. They're your vendor, okay? They're not your employee. And sometimes our small business owner just really kind of calling everybody employees, my employee, but actually is their vendor. You don't want to make these careless mistake because the IRS is hearing you. They hear you saying employee, it is employee. So if you think that person is employee, and make sure you have your payment of 25% in addition to what you paid ready to be there to pay for taxes. All right. So I want to make sure that you understand the significance of 1099 and the W-2. All right. So in here, there's a couple of other kind of 1099 also important to mention. So one of them is the royalties. So if you have $10 royalties, then the person who issues your royalty statement would have to do a 1099 for you. See, this is the $600 I was talking about. And if you make direct sales, at least $5,000 of the consumer products to a buyer for resale anywhere other than a permanent retail establishment. So what this says, you know how we have this online selling is just getting a lot more common, right? So this online selling, it says that if you sell to a warehouse, okay, and for retail, then even though for the amount of $5,000 of consumer product, which is regular product, then you should issue a 1099 for that person who bought from you. So you are the one that giving them the consumer product and the direct sale of at least 5,000, then 5,000, 5,001, anything above that, you should issue a 1099. So this is just another one that commonly see for 1099 miscellaneous. And I know folks knows 1099K. Okay, when you have merchant account, when you do online sale on the website and you receive a 1099K, 1099K is the people who runs the credit card machine behind the scene, they send to the business. So you must be running a business to receive 1099K, but 1099 NEC is the 1099 we're talking about here for subcontractor, but there's also 1099 miscellaneous. There's all kind of 1099 out there. So this is the one that labeled as 1099 miscellaneous. And here is the one that for 1099 NEC. You see, this is the one I was talking about for the subcontractors. And the subcontractors, and I need to give you their name and also their team. You see, in here, it didn't really say social security number, right? So it just says taxpayer identification number. So it could be a EIN number. Could be the employer identification number, could be a social security number, and it could even be a IT number. So this is the number that just representing the LLC or individual who received the funds. So you have this recipient's name and their street address, city. Okay, so this is the amount they're talking about. So make sure that you get yourself prepared, because it is very important to get those documentation in. You know, if your business get audited and you have, you know, $500,000 going to subcontractors. So the first thing IRS asks you is whether you filed 1099 NEC. And if you say, yes, I did, and then they want a copy of that. And what the reason they want a copy of that, because they will sample those copies. They will go to their system to see whether that person who received your 1099 filed taxes. Let's say if you were just, you know, okay, I'm just gonna do 1099, but I'm not sending it anywhere. So then IRS also knows, because the people will use your 1099 to file taxes, but there is no 1096 in the system to match it. So 1099 and 1096 between you and the recipient, your contractor, and their tax return and your tax return is synchronized. You cannot go away from one not doing the right thing. So they will come out as a red flag. So you want to make sure that your 1099 is issued definitely very accurately, not just almost okay. No, it has to be all okay in order you to not getting into being audited because of discrepancies. Okay, so of course there are things that you don't need to issue 1099. So one of the things I want to mention to you is that, you know, if you have a business and you pay your staff, you pay your employee the travel reimbursement, you know, they drove mileage and you pay them, that you don't need issue 1099. So that is something very often we hear people saying that, well, you know, I am employed with this company, but I also got 1099 because this is all of my mileage driving. I was doing it for the company. They sent me a 1099. No, don't do that. That need not to be done. Okay. And the payment to tax exempt organization, you don't need to do a 1099. All right, payment of rent to real estate agent and a property manager. So let's say if you are a business, you are renting, right? You're renting your space. Do you need to send a 1099 to your landlord? No, you don't need to, okay? And you paying rent, that is okay. So there's some exceptions. Most likely you already doing that because nobody asked you for it. So you probably never really did it, right? So the process, you send 1099 to IRS, and then you also send it to the State Department, and then distribute copy of 1099 to your contractors and a safe copy for your own, okay? So these, the first two bullet points need to be done before the end of January. Then for your vendors, the sooner the better. So you will want that to be done. Always save a copy. Always save a copy. So someone was asking me that, how long do I save a copy, Ying? Some people tell me 3, some people tell me 5, some people tell me 7. You know, the way I tell people how long they need to keep, I always keep the longest one out of the government. So since the pandemic, the government was talking about 7. Okay, they were saying that some of those pandemic claims, you need to be keeping your record for 7. You know, those claims are related to tax a big time. So instead of saying 3, then now we say you keep it for 7, just because you just come out of the pandemic and we probably need 7 years to get through 2020. So by 2027, if you want to throw away anything in 2020, I think that's safe. Okay, so you want to keep things for 7 years. Now you hear me saying that. I think long ago when I was doing webinar, I was telling people different years, but of course situation changes, so we change our mind as well. Then your 1096 is the annual summary that you know. So that should be that, you know, you just know that 1096 is a summary for 1099 that you issued. We also have a couple of filing date for 2021 taxes. So the section 6071 require you to file the 1099 NEC on or before January 31. Okay. So it doesn't matter how you file, and this is your due date, whether paper or electronic, doesn't matter. And the file form 1099 miscellaneous. See, this is 1099 NEC is related to subcontractors. 1099 miscellaneous could be related to like the royalties and in other things in other nature, right? Rent and things like that. By February, the end of February, and if you file on paper, you can do it at the end of the March. So that's kind of what need to happen. Make sure you understand the due date. And of course, and if you made a mistake and how to correct it, and the 1099 and W-2 corrections is relatively straightforward. You just make sure that you check box on that correct section. All right, I know I'm running out of time. I didn't even realize the time, but anyway, and here is our contact information, folks, and make sure that you know, and we want to be your free knowledge disseminator, and we want to make sure that what we know we share with you. Of course, you use the information responsibly, and I hope that you learned things 1 or 2 and contact us. Our office opens Monday to Saturday. If you don't know, we are the only CPA firms that open from Monday to Saturday. You can always call us and give us a call and email us, and I really appreciate you're with me today. Thank you, everyone. Quite a few people are new, and I welcome to our webinar. Bye-bye.